I stared at my phone as notification number 47 illuminated the screen. Another unknown number. Another desperate attempt to reach me. I silenced it like all the others, my hands still trembling from what I had done. The wedding photos were spread across my coffee table, evidence of a 2-year lie I had unwittingly lived. Then my phone buzzed with a text message, not a call this time. From him, her husband. We need to talk. I laughed bitterly. Yes, we certainly did. After 2 years of secrecy, of keeping things private for professional reasons, the truth deserved its moment in the spotlight, and I had made sure of that with one perfectly edited video montage. I met Eliza at a charity fundraiser in downtown Boston. I wasn't even supposed to be there. My friend had dragged me along after a last-minute cancellation. She stood by the bar, a vision in a deep blue dress that matched her eyes, her arc hair cascading over her shoulders. When our gazes met, something electric passed between us. I crossed the room without hesitation, introducing myself with more confidence than I typically possessed. James Parker, I said, extending my hand. Eliza Monroe, she replied, her voice carrying a slight southern note that seemed out of place in Massachusetts. She worked in corporate law, she told me, specializing in mergers and acquisitions for a prestigious firm. I shared details about my work as a software developer for a healthcare startup. The conversation flowed effortlessly, punctuated by genuine laughter and lingering eye contact. By the end of the evening, I had her number and a promise for dinner the following weekend. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant tucked away in the North End. She arrived 15 minutes late, slightly flustered but gorgeous in a simple black dress. She apologized profusely, citing a work emergency. I didn't mind, I would have waited hours. I should warn you, she said as we settled into our corner table, the candlelight dancing across her features. My job is demanding. I value my privacy quite a bit. The partners at my firm are traditional, and they don't exactly approve of associates having distractions. I'm a distraction? I teased. She smiled, reaching across the table to touch my hand, the best kind. What followed was a whirlwind romance, albeit one conducted almost entirely in private. We never took photos together. She said she preferred to live in the moment. We always met at my apartment or at restaurants outside the city where she claimed she wouldn't run into colleagues. I never met her friends, and she never met mine. She had plausible explanations for everything. Her firm was conservative. She was up for partner consideration. Discretion was paramount in her professional circles. For my 32nd birthday, 6 months into our relationship, I wanted nothing more than to introduce her to my family. I wish I could, she said, curled against me on my couch. But I have that conference in Chicago, remember? It's been scheduled for months. I swallowed my disappointment. Maybe next time. Definitely next time, she promised, kissing me softly. I'll make it up to you when I get back. And she did, with an expensive watch and a weekend of undivided attention that made me forget my earlier disappointment. Christmas came and went without meeting families. So did New Year's, Valentine's Day, Easter. Each occasion had a reasonable explanation: family emergencies, work commitments, scheduling conflicts. The pattern continued until our 1-year anniversary approached. Let's go away somewhere, I suggested one evening. Just the two of us. Nantucket, maybe, or the Berkshires. She hesitated. I'd love that, James, but let me guess, work. She nodded, her expression apologetic. A big case just landed on my desk. The timing couldn't be worse. I couldn't hide my frustration. It's always something, isn't it? Please try to understand, she pleaded. This is temporary. Once I make partner, things will be different. I wanted to believe her. I did believe her. So I waited, loving her through hastily arranged dinners and sporadic weekends, loving her through missed holidays and canceled plans, loving her despite the growing unease that something wasn't quite right. 18 months into our relationship, I surprised her at her apartment, a place I rarely visited because she preferred the neutrality of my space. I had picked up soup and medication after she called in sick. When she opened the door, her surprise was evident and not entirely pleasant. James, what are you doing here? Taking care of my sick girlfriend, I said, holding up the bag of supplies. Can I come in? She hesitated before stepping aside. Of course, but the place is a mess. I wasn't expecting company. Her apartment was immaculate and strangely impersonal. No family photos, no mementos, nothing that suggested the vibrant woman I'd fallen in love with lived there. It felt like a hotel suite, temporary, transitional. How long have you lived here again? I asked, setting the soup on her pristine kitchen counter. About 3 years, she replied, not meeting my eyes. I'm not much for decorating. That night, as she slept beside me, I found myself staring at the ceiling. A strange hollow was expanding in my chest. 2 years of loving someone, and I had never seen where she truly lived. I had never met anyone important to her. I existed in her life as a secret, a compartmentalized affair. The following weekend, she canceled our plans again. A family emergency, she said. Her mother needed her. I offered to come along, to support her through whatever was happening. That's sweet, she said. Her voice tight, but it's complicated. Family drama, you understand. I didn't. Not really, but I nodded anyway. Call me if you need anything. 3 days later, I saw her at a restaurant across town. I had stopped for lunch with a colleague when I spotted her across the room, laughing with a group of people I had never seen before. She looked happy, relaxed, nothing like someone dealing with a family emergency. I excused myself from my table and approached hers. Elisa, the laughter died on her lips. She stared at me as though I were a ghost, her face draining of color. James, what are you doing here? Having lunch, I replied, my voice even despite the thundering of my heart. I thought you were out of town. Family emergency. She recovered quickly, standing to pull me slightly away from the table. I got back early. These are colleagues, we're celebrating a big win. Colleagues who don't know about us, I assume. I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Please don't do this here, she whispered, her eyes darting back to the table. I'll call you later. I'll explain everything. She did call with another perfectly reasonable explanation. The emergency had resolved quickly. She had returned early. Yes, she should have called me, but she didn't want to disturb my workday. The colleagues were indeed unaware of our relationship. Maintaining that professional boundary was still important to her. I accepted her explanation because the alternative was too painful to consider. I loved her. Despite the secrecy, despite the growing list of inconsistencies, I loved her, and I believed she loved me. Our second anniversary approached with the same pattern of limited availability and private celebrations. But this time I had made a decision. I would ask her to marry me. Despite everything, I couldn't imagine my life without her. The secrecy would end with an engagement, it had to. No one could reasonably expect to hide a fiancé. I purchased a ring, a platinum band with a princess-cut diamond that cost for months of my salary. I arranged a private dinner at an upscale restaurant in Beacon Hill, one we had visited on our third date. I confirmed the reservation 3 times, anxious that everything be perfect. The evening arrived and I waited at our table, the ring box burning a hole in my jacket pocket. 30 minutes passed. Then an hour. I called her phone repeatedly, each call going straight to voicemails. I texted. Nothing. Finally, at the 2-hour mark, a message came through: emergency deposition prep. Can't get away. So sorry. Make it up to you tomorrow. XO. I stared at the screen, the carefully constructed reality I had built beginning to crumble around me. This wasn't about professional boundaries or partner track concerns. This was something else entirely. The next day, she appeared at my apartment with an expensive bottle of wine and sincere apologies. She looked tired. She said the deposition had kept her up most of the night. I nodded, accepting her explanation outwardly while inwardly resolving to discover the truth. For the next week, I became someone I never thought I'd be: suspicious, vigilant, borderline obsessive. I drove by her office building at the time she claimed to have meetings. I checked social media platforms she had told me she never used. I even considered hiring a private investigator before deciding that was a step too far. Then came the email, anonymous, sent from a temporary address with the subject line: thought you should know. The message was brief. Your girlfriend isn't who she says she is. Open the attachment. My finger hovered over the attachment icon, my heart racing. This could be malware, a phishing attempt, or something equally malicious. But it could also be the truth I had been searching for. I clicked. The first image loaded slowly: Eliza in a white wedding dress, radiant, her smile wider than I had ever seen it. Beside her stood a tall man with salt and pepper hair, looking at her adoringly. The timestamp in the corner indicated the photo was taken 6 months ago, 18 months into our relationship. More photos followed. Eliza and her husband cutting a cake, dancing, surrounded by family and friends. The final image was a close-up of their hands, wedding bands gleaming. The room spun. I rushed to the bathroom, barely making it before emptying the contents of my stomach. When the physical shock subsided, a cold, clarifying rage took its place. 2 years of lies. 2 years of being the other man without knowing it. I spent the next 3 days in a fog, ignoring Eliza's texts and calls. She grew increasingly concerned, finally showing up at my apartment unannounced. James? What's going on? "I've been worried sick," she said when I opened the door. I stepped aside silently, allowing her to enter. On my coffee table lay printouts of the wedding photos. She froze, her eyes fixed on the images. "Where did you get these? Does it matter?" My voice sounded foreign to my own ears, flat, emotional as. "I can explain," she began, her hands trembling. "I'm sure you can. You're very good at explanations. Eliza, or is it Elizabeth on your marriage certificate? I never actually saw any identification, did I?" "It's not what it looks like." "It's exactly what it looks like," I interrupted. "You're married. You've been married for at least 6 months of our relationship, probably longer given the engagement period." She sank onto my couch, her composure cracking. "It's complicated." "Then uncomplicate it for me. Tell me the truth, for once." The story spilled out in fragments. Her husband, Richard, was 20 years her senior and a named partner at our firm. They had married for convenience and professional advancement, or so she claimed. Their relationship was loveless, a business arrangement. She had meant to tell me, but the right time never came. She loved me, not him. We could still be together. Each word felt like another knife twisting in my chest. "Get out," I said quietly when she finished. "James, please, get out," I roared, my composure finally shattering. 2 years. Eliza, 2 years of lying to my face, making me the other man without my knowledge or consent. "Get out before I call your husband myself." She left, mascara streaking her cheeks, still pleading for understanding. I locked the door behind her and collapsed against it, overwhelmed by rage and heartbreak in equal measure. The following morning brought a torrent of texts and voicemails from Eliza, alternating between desperate pleas and angry accusations. How dare I judge her when I didn't understand her situation? Richard was controlling, manipulative. Their marriage was a mistake she had been trying to rectify. I was being unreasonable, cruel even, by not hearing her out. I blocked her number only to receive messages from unfamiliar numbers, clearly her, using different phones. I blocked those too. 3 days after our confrontation, a large envelope arrived at my apartment. Inside was a manila folder containing what appeared to be legal documents, divorce papers filed by Elizabeth Monroe against Richard Monroe, dated 2 weeks earlier. A handwritten note accompanied them. Proof that I'm ending it. "Please talk to me." I studied the papers carefully. They looked legitimate, with court stamps and attorney signatures. Was she telling the truth? Had she actually begun divorce proceedings before I discovered her marriage? Or was this another elaborate deception? I wasn't sure what to believe anymore. Part of me wanted to call her to hear her explanation. The other part, the wounded, angry part, wanted nothing more to do with her lies. That evening, a new email arrived from the same anonymous address that had sent the wedding photos. The subject line read, "There's more you should know." This time, the attachment contained screenshots of text messages between Eliza and someone saved as R in her contacts. The conversations were aided throughout our relationship, discussing dinner plans, vacation arrangements, and most damning of all, jokes about her software guy who was completely clueless about their situation. One message from her read, "How long do you plan to keep stringing him along?" Eliza's response, "As long as it's entertaining. Besides, his apartment is convenient when I need to work late downtown." My hands shook with fury. Not only had she been married, but our entire relationship had been a source of amusement for her and her husband. I had been a joke, a convenient diversion, nothing more. I forwarded the screenshots to my email, then replied to the anonymous sender, "Who are you? Why are you sending me this?" The response came quickly. "Someone who knows what it's like to be played by Eliza Monroe. You're not the first. Won't be the last unless someone stops her." A new idea began to form, one born of pain and betrayal, perhaps, but one that offered the possibility of justice. I had nearly 2 years of photos and videos of Eliza and me together. She had been careful to avoid being photographed, but I had managed to capture moments here and there, her sleeping in my bed, cooking in my kitchen, lounging on my couch. Nothing explicit, but undeniably intimate. I spent the next day compiling these images, along with screenshots of our text conversations and emails. I created a timeline of our relationship, annotated with dates that now aligned with her marriage. Then I began crafting a video montage set to the song that had been playing during our first meeting at the charity event. The final product was 7 minutes long, a comprehensive documentation of our relationship alongside her marriage timeline. The last frame included a simple message, "Ask your wife about James Parker." My finger hovered over the send button for nearly an hour as I contemplated the consequences of my actions. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about truth. Richard deserved to know the woman he had married, just as I had deserved to know the woman I had loved. I pressed send, delivering the video to the email address listed in the divorce papers as belonging to Richard Monroe. 20 minutes later, my phone exploded with notifications, calls from unknown numbers, text messages pleading, threatening, begging. Eliza, in full panic mode. What have you done? He's going to destroy me professionally. You had no right. I'm on my way to your apartment. We need to talk now. I silenced my phone, strangely calm in the aftermath of my decision. The truth was out. Whatever happened next was beyond my control. Eliza arrived at my apartment within the hour, pounding on the door with such force that my neighbor poked his head out to check if everything was all right. James, open this door immediately. Her voice carried through the hallway, drawing more curious glances. I opened the door but blocked the entrance. I have nothing to say to you, Eliza. Her appearance shocked me. Gone was the polished, composed woman I had known. This Eliza was disheveled, her eyes wild with panic and rage. You've ruined everything, she hissed. Richard is threatening to expose me to the firm to have me disbarred. Do you have any idea what you've done? I showed your husband the truth. Something you should have done a long time ago. She tried to push past me into the apartment. I stood firm. You don't understand, she said, her voice breaking. Richard isn't just my husband. He controls everything: my career, my finances, my reputation. This wasn't just an affair, James. It was my escape plan. An escape plan that involved lying to me for 2 years, making me complicit in your infidelity without my knowledge, mocking me to your husband. I shook my head. Find another escape route. Eliza, this one's closed. I shut the door on her protestations, leaning against it as she continued to pound and plead. Eventually, the noise stopped. I heard her footsteps retreating down the hallway, followed by the ping of the elevator. The calls continued throughout the day, reaching 47 by evening, each from a different number, each ignored. I considered changing my own number but decided against it. Let her exhaust herself with attempts to reach me. I had nothing left to say. Then at 9:17 that night, a text message arrived from a number I didn't recognize. This is Richard Monroe. We need to talk. I agreed to meet Richard at a quiet bar in Cambridge the following evening. I arrived early, selecting a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. At precisely 7 o'clock, a man matching the wedding photos walked in, tall, distinguished, with salt and pepper hair and an expensive suit that screamed old money and power. He spotted me immediately, making his way to my table with confident strides. Up close, I could see the strain around his eyes, the only indication that his world had been appended as thoroughly as mine. James Parker, he said, extending his hand. I appreciate you meeting me. I shook his hand, surprised by the civility of the encounter. Seemed like the least I could do. He ordered a Scotch neat. I stuck with the beer I had already started. Your video was enlightening, he began after taking a substantial sip of his drink, though not entirely surprising. This caught me off guard, you knew? A humorless smile crossed his face. Not about you specifically, but about Eliza's extracurricular activities. Yes, I had my suspicions. Then why stay married to her? He studied his drink thoughtfully. Marriage is complicated, Mr. Parker, especially in circles like mine. Eliza and I had an arrangement that benefited us both. She got the career advancement she wanted. I got a beautiful, intelligent wife to accompany me to functions and impress clients. An arrangement, I repeated, disgust evident in my tone. Did that arrangement include her having affairs? Not explicitly. No, but I'm not naive. Eliza is young, vibrant. I'm 22 years her senior, with the work schedule of someone half my age. I turned a blind eye to certain indiscretions, provided they remained discreet. And what I showed you wasn't discreet enough. He leaned forward, his expression hardening. What you showed me wasn't an indiscretion, Mr. Parker. It was a relationship. A lengthy, involved relationship conducted while living in my home, spending my money, building her career at my firm. That crosses a line. I absorbed this, unsure how to respond. Part of me felt vindicated that Richard was as deceived as I had been, albeit in a different way. Another part felt oddly complicit in a system I wanted no part of. So what happens now? I asked finally. Now, Richard said, signaling for another drink. I used the prenuptial agreement Eliza was so reluctant to sign. She leaves the marriage with exactly what she brought into it, which is virtually nothing. She also leaves the firm with a recommendation that ensures she'll never practice law in Boston again. His calm, methodical dismantling of Eliza's life should have satisfied my desire for justice. Instead, it left me cold. And what do you want from me? I asked. Your continued discretion. The video you sent me remains between us. My colleagues, clients, and social circle need never know the details of my marriage's dissolution. And if I refuse? Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. I'm a very powerful man in this city, Mr. Parker. It would be unfortunate if your career encountered unexpected obstacles. The threat, thinly veiled as it was, ignited a fresh anger in me. Are you blackmailing me? I prefer to think of it as negotiating mutually beneficial terms. You keep quiet about the specifics, I ensure your professional future remains unimpeded, perhaps even enhanced, should the right opportunity present itself. I considered his offer, recognizing the path of least resistance when it was laid before me. Agreeing would allow me to walk away from this mess unscathed, possibly even advantaged. Richard would handle Eliza. I would never have to see or speak to her again. All right, I said finally. You have my discretion. Relief flickered across his features. Excellent. I believe this concludes our business. He stood, laying several bills on the table to cover our drinks. A pleasure meeting you, Mr. Parker, despite the circumstances. As he turned to leave, I added, one more thing, Mr. Monroe. Does Eliza know you're here? He paused. No. And she won't until the papers are served tomorrow morning. Goodbye, Mr. Parker. I trust our paths won't cross again. I watched him leave, a hollow victory settling in my stomach. Justice would be served, but not by my hand, and not in a way that felt particularly righteous. The following morning, I received a final text from Eliza. I hope you're satisfied. Richard is taking everything. My career, my home, my reputation, all gone. Was your revenge worth it? I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. 3 months passed. I threw myself into work, accepted a promotion, and began the slow process of rebuilding my life without Eliza's deception at its center. I heard rumors that she had left Boston, heading west to start over. Richard had made good on his threats, effectively blacklisting her from the legal community in Massachusetts. I kept my end of the bargain, telling no one the full story of what had happened. When friends asked about my sudden breakup, I offered vague explanations about incompatibility and growing apart. The pain dulled, though the trust issues remained, a persistent shadow over any new connections I attempted to form. Then, on a rainy Tuesday evening, a knock came at my apartment door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw a woman I didn't immediately recognize, petite, with short blonde hair and simple clothing. It took me a moment to realize it was Eliza, transformed almost beyond recognition. I opened the door but maintained my distance. What are you doing here? She looked different beyond just the hair, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. May I come in? Just for 5 minutes, please. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. She entered hesitantly, as though expecting to be ejected at any moment. I'm leaving Boston, she said without preamble. For good this time. I got a job in Seattle. Non-legal. Starting over. Congratulations, I replied, my tone neutral. I assume you didn't come here just to share your travel plans. She shook her head. I came to apologize. Not to ask forgiveness, I know that's not possible, but to acknowledge the pain I caused you. You deserved better than being collateral damage in my bad decisions. I studied her, searching for signs of the manipulation that had characterized our relationship. Finding none, I felt the anger that had sustained me begin to crack. Why, Eliza? Why the elaborate deception? Why me? She sank onto the edge of my couch, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. It wasn't supposed to be anything serious, just dinner. Maybe a brief affair. Something entirely separate from my complicated life with Richard. But then I fell in love with you and everything got messy. Love doesn't usually involve lying to someone for 2 years. No, it doesn't. She met my gaze directly. What I felt for you is real. James, everything else, the marriage, the career ambitions, the social climbing, that was the lie. You were the only authentic part of my life. I wanted to believe her. Part of me still yearned for an explanation that would make sense of the betrayal, that would allow me to preserve some small piece of what we had shared. Did you ever plan to tell me the truth? I asked. Yes, after the divorce was finalized. I filed the papers 2 weeks before you found out. I can prove it. But Richard contested everything, dragging it out. I was trying to extricate myself cleanly before bringing you into the mess. And the text messages? Joking about me with your husband? She winced. There's no excuse for those. I was playing a role with Richard, being the person he expected me to be. It was cruel and inexcusable. Silence stretched between us, heavy with unresolved emotions and irreparable damage. I don't expect you to forgive me, she continued finally. I just wanted you to know that what we had wasn't entirely built on lies. The woman you knew, the one who loved your terrible cooking and could beat you at chess and fell asleep during every movie, that was the real me. The only real me. I nodded, unsure what to say. The anger that had sustained me was giving way to something more complicated, not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps understanding. I should go, she said, standing. My flight leaves in the morning. As she moved toward the door, I found my voice. Eliza, who sent me those wedding photos? And the text screenshots? She paused, her hand on the doorknob. Richard did. He knew about you all along. He was just waiting for the right moment to use the information. But why, if he knew and didn't care? Because I was leaving him. The divorce filing changed everything. He couldn't control me anymore, so he decided to destroy what mattered to me instead. You were collateral damage in his revenge, just as I made you collateral damage in my escape attempts. The pieces clicked into place: the anonymous emails, the perfectly timed revelations, Richard's and surprised reaction to my video. We had both been pawns in a game with rules we didn't understand. He played us both, I said quietly. He's very good at games, she replied. Better than either of us. Another silence fell, this one somehow less tense than before. What will you do in Seattle? I asked finally. A small, genuine smile touched her lips. Teaching. High school English. What I wanted to do before law school, before Richard, before all of it. You'll be good at that. I hope so. She opened the door, then turned back one last time. Be happy, James. You deserve that much. After she left, I sat alone in my apartment, processing the final revelations of our complicated story. Richard had orchestrated the exposure of Eliza's affair not out of moral outrage or betrayal, but as punishment for her attempt to leave him. He had manipulated my pain and anger, turning me into the instrument of his revenge. I pulled out my phone and composed a text to Richard Monroe. I know what you did. Our agreement is void. Expect my full account of events to reach your firm's partners by morning. His response came almost immediately. That would be unwise, Mr. Parker. Very unwise indeed. I smiled grimly, typing my reply. Check your email. Attached to the email I had just sent him was a recording of our entire conversation at the bar, including his admission of the arrangement with Eliza, his blackmail attempt, and his plans to destroy her professionally. Massachusetts was a two-party consent state for recordings, but I had taken the precaution of stating at the beginning of our meeting that I would be recording our conversation for my records. Richard had nodded absently, to focus on controlling the narrative to register the implication. Also copied on the email were the managing partners of his firm, the Massachusetts Bar Association Ethics Committee, and Eliza's new email address in Seattle. My phone rang. Richard. I declined the call with a sense of satisfaction I hadn't felt in months. Let him experience the panic and desperation at Eliza and I had both felt under his manipulations. An hour later, a text arrived from Eliza. What did you do? Richard's lawyer just called offering a settlement. I responded simply, leveled the playing field. 3 days later, a package arrived from Seattle containing a single item, a chess piece. The White Queen, with a note attached. Your move. Always was. I placed the piece on my bookshelf, a reminder not of what I had lost, but of what I had survived. The truth, as it turned out, hadn't been with Richard or with Eliza. It had been buried somewhere in between, waiting for someone to care enough to uncover it. 6 months later, I received another package, this one containing divorce papers, finalized and official, along with a news clipping about Richard Monroe's resignation from his firm following ethics investigations. No note accompanied these items. None was needed. I had been a pawn in their game of marriage, but in the end, I was the one who remained standing on the board. Checkmate.